Greetings YouTube viewers and welcome to another video on the Ian Bullock channel. Today it's Thursday, July the 28th, 2022, and I'm recording this video because I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about my experience of owning an Apple Watch. Now my Apple Watch isn't any old Apple Watch, it's one that dates back to 2015 when the watch was first released onto the market as what was known as the first generation. Now, I've always been someone who's been crazy about gadgets of all types, particularly having watched lots of James Bond films as a teenager back in the 1970s with Roger Moore. And so when they announced that Apple were going to be producing a watch that not only told the time, but also made phone calls and took messages and told you where you were and all sorts of incredible things, I was really excited. So I pre-ordered one as soon as I could, and at the time this watch was selling for £340. Now we were told that year, 2015, that the first Apple Watches in the UK wouldn't really be available until June and only from very selected shops. But actually I was really surprised because my watch turned up in April 2015. Now, I read on the internet that this watch was officially released on the 24th of April 2015. Now, by the 25th of April, I was recording this YouTube video, which has had more than 4,000 hits, because I wanted to show in my great excitement what it was like to unbox the first Apple Watch. And actually, back then, I was quite confident that this was one of a few Apple Watches that were in circulation in the UK at that time. So when I bought my Apple Watch, I bought this one called the Sport model, which came with a sort of silver aluminium case and this blue rubber sport band. Now, since my model came out, which was called the first generation, I think there have been 8 series of these Apple Watches in total. We're currently on the series 7. And after my first generation one, there was series 1, 2, all the way up to 7. Now, in that time, obviously, the watches have come on a long way in terms of the technology, the battery life, and all the functions that they perform. One of the other things is that my watch is solely dependent on having an Apple iPhone with you, because the watch pairs with it via Bluetooth. And really, the watch doesn't do very much unless it has an Apple iPhone sort of powering it in terms of the flow of data. So nowadays, with the Apple Watch Series 7, it can be used as a kind of standalone watch, which is one of the innovations. Now, when I bought mine, I was quite convinced that within a year or two, I'd have replaced it. But £340 when I bought it, I decided that I'd wait a while and see how long my watch lasted for before considering a replacement. But I do think now it's time just to update you on how things have been going. So there was a lot of anticipation and excitement when Apple first launched this watch in 2015. It looked so cool and the design was so innovative and striking. And I remember back in the day a lot of amusing people putting posts on social media saying, "Look guys, I bought one of those new expensive Apple Watches." Now when I first got mine, I wasn't really sure how I was going to get on with it, because back in those days the Apple Watch was really a kind of extension of the Apple iPhone and had to be sort of tethered to the phone in order to work. And I started experimenting with different face designs, screen designs, and also all the different functions of the watch, some more successful than others. So I think back in those early days, the Apple Watch probably promised more than it actually delivered. But you have to remember that this was a first generation model, and there were always going to be teething problems that would be sorted out with subsequent versions of the watch. For me personally, there always seemed to be a terribly slow connection between my iPhone in my pocket and the watch on my wrist, and this meant that a lot of the functionality really was a problem because I just couldn't seem to load the apps quickly enough or make any proper use of many of the functions, the messaging and the email and those kind of things. So when Apple first launched this watch, they were very quick to point out that this wasn't a kind of iPhone on your wrist, a standalone phone. It was an extension of the iPhone in your pocket. Now, for me personally, I've had loads of problems over the years trying to use it as an actual phone. Making and receiving calls has just been virtually impossible, probably down to the fact that it's first generation, probably the poor connection between my iPhone and the watch. So I think pretty much whenever anyone's called me, I've tried answering it on the watch, but have very quickly reverted to my iPhone and kind of given up. What I think has been more successful in the 7 years I've had this watch for has been notifications, things like news headlines, sports results, weather notifications, step counter, heart rate alerts, things like that. I think that's been really useful, and it's just been nice having an extension of the iPhone on your wrist, but I've been disappointed about that really, and I'm hoping that the new iPhone incarnations, particularly the Series 7, work a little bit better as a phone on your wrist, and that certainly would be a little bit more like a James Bond gadget and what I imagined the phone would be when it was first launched. So here we are again, folks. It's 7 years on since I recorded that original unboxing video for YouTube, and since I bought my first generation Apple Watch. Just going to flip it round to get it to show you the time. 3:04, Thursday the 28th of July 2022. And the old video was recorded in April 2015. So it's given me 7 years of use, this watch. And it's been pretty good. I'm still wearing the same blue sport band strap, as you can see, which has always been my favourite. Now, over the years, I have actually bought several straps that will go on the Apple Watch here. None of these is an original Apple product, because at the moment, I mean, they're something like £49 for one of these rubber sport bands. So these were things that I think I bought off eBay or Amazon or something, different configurations. And of course, with the Apple Watch, you can change the colours of the face to match the strap. So this one I think has been my favourite, the yellow, that looks really nice, particularly in the summer. And then this one, which is a kind of, well, like a clone of the Apple Nike watch. So yeah, probably not worth paying a lot of money for those. I think they were probably about £5 or £10 each from the internet. So at the moment they're retailing for £49, which is quite a lot of money, although of course they are authentic Apple products. So this watch really has done very well for a 7-year-old first generation Apple Watch. It's never actually gone wrong, and I've worn it pretty much every day for the past 7 years. Just going to flip it round again. One of the problems more recently though has been, I don't know whether you can really tell on this video, but it's got kind of screen burn on it, because I always have it on this modular face, so it's always been on the same face, and I think some of the sort of pixels have burnt out on it. It's faded on the right hand side, which I was a bit disappointed about, and I've tried rebooting it and everything. Can't really seem to get that to be any different. It doesn't look as vibrant as it did when I first bought it. And then round about May, June time this year, 2022, I got a bit fed up with the lack of vibrancy on the screen, so I just popped it on its charger and left it there, and I haven't really used it ever since. And when I was preparing to record this video, I was about to tell everyone how well the watch had done in its 7 years. But as I picked it up today for the first time ever, and I'll show you, the face fell off. So I'll just try and show you that if I can. Look, if you look, you might be able to see the whole front of the face there has kind of come away, unglued or something. I've never experienced that in the time that I've had it. So that's now sort of flopping around like that. So really, I think it has now sort of died a death. It's become very slow. The battery life is very poor, and the whole thing, I think, has kind of ground to a halt. So I think it's really time to replace my first generation Apple Watch after 7 years of service. I think we can say now, folks, that it's well and truly knackered here in July 2022. So we've had a heat wave recently. We've had the hottest temperatures ever in the UK here in July 2022, and the Apple Watch has been left on its charger in quite a warm room, and I'm wondering whether the heat maybe has got to it, because as I said, for the first time since I've had this watch, 2015, the whole front of the face has just kind of come unbonded somehow. I don't know whether this is a common fault with Apple Watches, but no, I think really the watch has done incredibly well for a first generation watch. When I bought it, it was £340. And I think I made the point in my previous video, the unboxing video, that at the time I was quite interested in the stainless steel bracelet model, but it was about £800 or £900. And I wasn't really prepared to pay £800 or £900 for a first generation product that might quickly be updated. So I settled for this £340, and yeah, I think it's done ever so well. And as I said earlier, it's never broken or gone wrong or had to be repaired or anything, apart from now where the screen is effectively sort of burnt out and the face has fallen off and the battery life is very poor, and I think the whole thing now has been overtaken by time and technology probably. But yeah, farewell to my first generation Apple Watch. Hello again, YouTube viewers, and welcome back. Today is July the 30th, 2022, and yesterday, you may be surprised to hear, was my 59th birthday, although you might think I'm some young trendy person who's always talking about technology. I was 59, and this beautiful, beautiful Apple Watch Series 7 was a birthday gift from my wife, which was very kind. And so as you can see, I've now entered a whole new era of Apple Watches, having replaced my old first generation one with this little beauty. So my last Apple Watch came in a kind of silver brushed aluminium case. I don't think that Apple does that anymore, so this time with the Series 7 I've chosen this rather lovely sort of silver stainless steel, and also opted for this very attractive bright green sport band. Now the reason why I went for that was because I can use my old straps, I believe, on this Series 7, so it made sense not to buy a colour that I'd already got, and I thought this bright green one looks really quite striking actually. Yes, I really do like this modular layout. It gives out so much information, as you can see: time, date, location, weather, high and low temperature. The bottom left-hand corner there is sunrise, sunset times. The middle at the bottom is pulse rate, and then a step counter on the right-hand side. So I do really like this face, and I ought to try experimenting, I think, with some of the others, although I'm not all that keen on those, but I will show you a few as we run through this video. So one of the many differences between the Series 7 and the earlier Apple Watches is that this one and some of its predecessors have had a display that's permanently on, whereas the older Apple Watches, they were a kind of blank screen until you pressed a button or raised your wrist. And I think back in the early days that was very much a kind of battery saving device really. But now the display is, it has this kind of slightly faded sleep display, if you like. And when you raise your wrist, the display goes into a much brighter and bolder picture. But I think it's certainly nicer to have a watch that actually has a face that's on rather than the blank screen of the earlier models. So this Series 7 Apple Watch has a 45mm screen. My old one was 42, so this is very fractionally bigger. It also benefits from these kind of rounded edges, so there's overall more screen size, and I think this watch is supposed to have the biggest of the faces of all the Apple Watches so far. It's very bright and vivid and sharp, and it looks great. Now this is the jellyfish display, and actually talking about jellyfishes, I remember back in the day with the early Apple Watches, they were supposed to be splash proof, I think, and some people used to even shower in them. I never took mine anywhere near water, and actually having seen that face fall off it, I'm rather glad I didn't. But these ones are supposed to be water resistant to 50 meters, so I think they're okay for showering and probably swimming in the pool on holiday and that, not for any kind of serious scuba diving. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how I get on with that. Personally, I'm not that keen on them putting watches, expensive watches, anywhere near water, but I might have a go if I'm on holiday, hopefully without jellyfish. Right, so I'm now trying out Minnie Mouse as my screen. Now, one of the main differences between this watch and my first generation Apple Watch is that this one has a built-in cellular chip, which means that it can connect to the network and other data services. So it can be used as a standalone phone on your wrist without you having to have your iPhone around. And that's obviously a big difference and a big breakthrough for the Apple Watches. So once I get it set up, it'll be really interesting to see how I get on with that. And also more generally, how I get on with the connection between my iPhone and this watch and how fast it performs. So apparently more than 100 million people are currently using Apple Watches, and I've found with mine that once you get one, it's quite hard to ever find the time to use your other watches because it's so indispensable and so useful connecting to your iPhone that other watches kind of become redundant, really. So my original Apple Watch, if you remember, cost £340, and that was back in 2015. And this one, here in the summer of 2022, the Series 7 cost, I think it was £649 for the stainless steel case plus the sport band. So quite an expensive gadget, really, but then lots of things from Apple are these days. I also opted, rightly or wrongly, for the 2 years of Apple Care Plus cover. But yeah, a nice birthday treat, and I'm hoping that if I can get 7 years worth out of it, then we'll certainly have had our value for money. So that's about it really from me, Ian Bullock, here in Norwich, UK, with my old Apple Watch and my new Series 7 Apple Watch. Let me know in the comments below if you've had an experience of having an Apple Watch that's lasted you for years and years and years and you've had great service from. Let's see how this one goes, and maybe in 7 years' time I'll pop another video up on YouTube saying that this watch has finally come to an end after 7 years of great service. Thank you for watching. Good luck with your Apple Watches. It's Ian Bullock saying goodbye on Saturday the 30th of July 2022.